*6. Unmute yourself. Oops. We have nothing on the consent calendar. So we have, first item is the Main Street Station Crepe Trolley renewal.
All righty. Good evening, commissioners. For the record, my name is Cliff Cross, Planner 2. And tonight I'll be bringing the Main Street Station Crepe Trolley, also known as Trolley Crepes, to you tonight. I don't know if it's... Awesome. So this project was previously approved in 2000 or originally approved in 2017. This is a picture of the trolley here. When it was originally approved in 2017, it was a little bit unique of a application. It was submitted as more or less a food cart. And at the time, it did not follow our vendor cart policy. So at that time, the director reclassified it as the same permit classification as a large vendor cart. And we were able to kind of move forward from there. So in the packet, it's not laid out as a regular vendor cart, but kind of a unique application. And most of it is still, applicable to all of our policies within the development code. So architectural compatibility, density, all of that information was all approved previously, and none of that information has changed with this application. This application is simply just a renewal. It will basically give them another 3-year permit for operation. For the cart itself, everything, as you can see it, is laid out in normal business hours. In the evening time, it is taken away and parked in the garage. Let me pull the site plan for us. So here is the location that it's parked during business hours. And then everything in that photo is basically taken up and then driven down this kind of service road behind Main Street Station and into a garage. So it's not, viewable or much that in the evening time. Everything is secure. Other aspects of it, they do use the trash and refuse here at Main Street Station, as well as any gray water, because the food cart itself is self-contained, is taken to Upper Blue Sanitation District, and be able to dispose of correctly there. I guess everything else with the project is staying exactly the same. No color changes. Everything was designed to match Main Street Station originally, materials as well. And then they are not asking any additional signage or anything. The owners of the cart are not here this evening, but I believe we have the manager here this evening. So if you do have any specific questions for the cart operation, he will be here to answer. But at this time, I'm happy to take any other questions that the commissioners might have.
A very thorough investigation into this unique application. I'm wondering, and I say this from having made a trip to Austin and to Long Beach, California recently, where the food trucks are such a huge part of delivery of restaurant food in the neighborhoods. Would it make sense for us to look at a work session or some language to specifically address food trucks?
I mean, possibly it might be a good aspect. We do have very particular guidelines for our vendor carts in the historic district because we do want to, follow that historic standard. There weren't really massive food trucks pulling up on the sidewalk historically. So that's definitely if a recommendation from council or the commission would like to discuss that. That's something staff can prepare for you.
I'm just thinking we're looking at this as a unique application. It doesn't really fit any of our specific criteria, and maybe getting out in front of somebody who really wants to bring a food truck
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
think about how that could be regulated.
Yeah, definitely right now. I mean, obviously, if you were here this weekend, Oktoberfest, a lot of food trucks and vendors are allowed under those special event permits. But just our normal, vendor carts that are here and operating year round, they would not be allowed to follow that typology of or format.
One of the things I think why it's possible to do it here or maybe like an area like the village is because it's an area that is private property, but it has looser design guidelines. So if you look at the town as a whole, with the historic district, we wouldn't really allow any of these on private property because of the conflict they would have with the handbook of design standards. And once you start traveling outside of the historic and conservation district, you have a limited amount of areas like this where you would have private property where you could go in and put something and it doesn't really conflict with the architecture so much. And then when you get beyond this, then the bulk of the town is large lot, single family lots, which any commercial would be prohibited. So it's a really like limited amount of places that you can place them, since the town does not allow, vendor carts or a food truck on any like public right of ways or public property.
The logical location, if I was thinking about a food truck, would be the city market parking lot. And bring in 3 or 4 of them in there and have all kinds of things that you might offer. I don't know, if I had one and I wanted to bring it in here, I would certainly be saying, well, what about the crepe trolley? Why can't I have my food truck in here? So I don't know.
Yeah, I think like city market, I guess, being outside the conservation district, there might be the possibility for a vendor cart or other items, but it also would be at the discretion of the owner, and it also would have to be in a location that isn't where there's any required parking for existing uses on site.
Just my thought. And no questions about this project.
Thank you.
No questions.
No questions. But I like the food truck idea. And I know like some neighborhoods down in Denver, they'll have, like Friday night, they'll have a truck come in or 2 trucks come in, and that's kind of nice. Maybe we could do that more in the residential areas or something like that. In ski season, so people don't have to drive down to town, or I don't know, but maybe that's competition with the restaurants here. So I see all sides.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, good report, Cliff. At the top of page 15, it states absolute exterior lighting. The trolley will have no exterior lighting. But if I zoom in on the picture of the trolley, there's bistro lights hanging all over the back and side of it. So I wondered, did someone add some non-permitted bistro lights to the trolley? If you zoom on that picture, you can see it. Didn't see that.
Do have to be honest that I did not take this photo, and it may not be an updated photo. But I believe that the trolley would still be allowed to have lights during the holiday season. As you can see in the upper right hand of that corner, there's a lot of snow on the ground. So that probably does show that it would still be in ski season when those holiday lights would be allowed. But that's definitely something that staff can look at as we go through this.
I think we should add a condition.
Saying, because
No, any existing lights shall be removed, bistro lights.
Per our town code definition, these would be holiday lights, and
Or holiday?
we do allow people to keep their lights up year round as long as they're not being utilized in the off season.
They look like bistro lights to me. If you zoom in,
Yeah,
they're the bigger bulbs.
The
The back end, I think that's what he's talking about.
they're around front too, but they're above the two round top windows at the front.
Yes, I can definitely see what it's Elaine's saying.
They have that black knob.
I think my interpretation is these would still be holiday lighting. Our bistro lighting is specifically summertime only allowed exterior food and beverage areas.
Bistro lights are usually strung as opposed to hung on the structure.
Yes, sir.
And it says the trolley will have no exterior lighting. And it says it's a policy 46 absolute. That they be removed. Okay. That's a good suggestion. I'm fine with that.
What are the hours of the trolley? Do they go past, 4 where it's dark, or 5?
Yes,
So how would they read that sign on the outside if there's no light?
there's
on it?
still lighting within the Main Street area. Main Street Station area. It has public lighting. But yeah, I mean, definitely if we can, I guess just for clarification, are we saying that the trolley cannot have any holiday lighting?
Chris.
Because I think that they'd still be allowed to, but I'm happy to discuss it.
Why wouldn't we? It seems reasonable to me that they should be allowed a light for their sign so that people could see it at night. Not a really bright one, but
Decorative lighting is only allowed to outline a building or structure. Or like trees between commercial and mixed use buildings. So this wouldn't qualify. Holiday lighting.
What are you reading, Julia?
Definition of decorative lighting.
the new modified one.
No, the current.
Oh, okay.
I'm getting the policy 46 just to see if there's anything else. Oh, actually.
Could ask the applicant too. Do you have holiday lighting on the part typically?
They just hired.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay, just since he's not on mic, he's not sure what's on there right now. So,
Do you feel like the lighting in the area will be sufficient so people could read the sign on it? So we don't know.
So, yeah, I can't comment on that, especially in the winter when it gets dark so early.
To Julia's point, the decorative lighting does appear that would not be allowed on a vehicle. But however, sign lighting, I believe would. There is an allowance as long as you follow the requirements under Title IX, Chapter 15 regarding sign lighting. They would be able to have sign lighting. And typically for signage, we administer that through a separate sign permit. So if they wanted to come in and modify, I guess that would be reviewed at the staff level. And it would, I think there's still is there a standard condition that says all signage would be, this doesn't approve any signage that they need a separate sign permit or because it's existing, we didn't have that condition of approval in there.
I believe I specified that the signage has already been approved with a separate permit.
So, yeah, I think if it states that, they could modify, through a sign permit.
Does the sign approval process include lighting if lighting is depicted in the drawing of the sign?
Yes. There's sign lighting allowed for signage.
I
The
can,
sign code.
That sign permit if they have one.
Yep, and they could modify a sign permit
Okay.
because they could always change their name too, and that's pretty common.
I can pull up that. Since we're discussing it, I'll pull up the sign lighting portion here real quick.
It's actually in the packet tonight too.
So Mike, would you like to change that finding to just allow approvable sign lighting?
Probably. I mean, I'm obviously not opposed to lighting. I'm just trying to keep us compliant with the policy. And I do think Breckenridge has a few too many holiday and bistro lights strung up and down Main Street. So I'm open to some good language on how to clarify that. I think that's clearly in violation. So, you spoke to the sign and lighting the sign, and I'm speaking to what appear to be the non-compliant bistro lights that, according to policy 46, should come off the trolley. So I would be agreeable to an additional condition that said something to the effect that any and all non-compliant lighting shall be removed from the exterior of the trolley. And under staff review, the applicant may update the sign and the lighting specifically of the sign. And Steve Gerard could probably say it a lot better than I.
Yeah, I did pull up the section of lighting standards. I mean, it's just our typical shielded, downcast lighting that's required.
Sure.
That's directed at the sign.
Which these would not be in compliance to that either.
Agreed.
Susan, do you have any comment? Alan, how about you?
Thanks. Just a couple of things. One, just on the lighting, having just read 30 pages of lighting regulations, I think the applicant can also put, that's an opaque canopy, so they can put some lighting under the canopy, which would be allowed. The other thing is just more, if I understand correctly, Cliff, this was, this permit had expired and neither the applicant nor the planning department caught it. Is that correct?
That is correct. And if you would like me to explain it a little bit, the original approval of this truck came under the Main Street Station owners or developer, and then it was sold off to Aaliyah, and they did not, or they were not made aware of that 3-year expiration. And as many people know, COVID-19 hit in 2020 when this was being, up for renewal, and staff was not made aware of it. So I found it during some other research for Main Street Station.
Yeah, and please don't get me wrong. I'm not looking to point fingers anywhere, either with the town staff or with the applicant. I'm just, in the normal process, is the onus on permits, the applicants, permit holders, do they just have to wait until they're notified by town, or is the onus on them to renew? I'm just curious about the process. And again, I don't want to be putting burdens on small business owners. I'm a big support of them. I'm just curious how the process works.
Yeah, usually the onus is on the operator or the permit holder, with just the number of permits that we go through. But in this case, understanding, I think that the history, we could see how that, someone that just took it over from the developer didn't understand it wasn't running in perpetuity.
Got it. Okay. Understood. All right, that's all I got.
And Mark, this is a public hearing, so we need to open that.
I'm sorry,
This is a public hearing, so we need to.
is there,
Questions for the applicant?
Sure.
go ahead.
I don't necessarily have one, but isn't that the next step?
Okay, I thought you were, is anybody have any questions for the applicant? Anybody out there in the public that has a comment or a question about this project?
Did the applicant want to speak at all additionally?
What was the consensus on the holiday lights? Take those down and
Yeah, the
we can aim a
holidays.
aim some lights at the sign, correct?
Yeah, get the lights approved for the signage,
Okay,
but no holiday lights on vehicles.
already. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further comment, we can close the public hearing. And at this time, we should entertain a motion.
Comments, commissioner comments.
Any commissioner comments? Susan?
No comment.
My previously noted comment that Julia stated too, that the holiday lights are not permitted. And we would add the condition that I previously dictated. And if I need to dictate it again, I'll try.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Alan, do you have any further comments?
Yeah, I think we would have made a better informed decision if we had samples of the product, even though I'm not there. But otherwise, no comments.
Any comment?
Could have provided lunch. No comments. Thank you.
Any comments?
No comments, thank you.
No comments.
Well, we can entertain a motion at this point.
Mr. Vice Chair, I move that we approve Main Street Station crepe trolley at the Village at Breckenridge, lots 8, 9, A2, 9B, 10A, and 10B, 505 South Main Street. Application PL-2023-0379 with the additional condition number 14 that the crepe trolley comply with absolute policy 46 of the Development Code and all town lighting and sign requirements.
So here's second.
Second, and thank you.
All right, can we get a roll call?
Mr. Lees. Mr. Lees,
Yes.
Ms. Gort,
Yes.
Mr. Gerard,
Yes.
Mr. Frechter,
Yes.
Mr. Geller,
Yes?
Ms. Proper,
Yes.
Mr. Guerra.
Yes.
All right, project passes 7-0.
We can move on to the work session at this point.
All right, thanks so much. Julia Puster for the record. So exterior lighting policy. I just wanted to give a little intro and background to this before Ellie gets into her presentation about the actual changes. And we've been working on becoming a dark sky certified community since, I guess, April. When we got the council approval to move forward with applying for certification, it does come with a lot of stipulations, only a portion of which you guys are going to be reviewing. And there's 42 certified communities in the entire world. So if we make it certified, it's kind of a big deal. So we're hoping to get there, but it does require a lot on the side of the town as well. So
So are there 45 because it's a difficult hurdle or because there's a lack of interest on other municipalities?
well, I guess I can't speak for everybody, but it's difficult.
What's your impression? That
I
it's a
think it's
difficult hurdle?
difficult, and I'll give you a little bit more information. So you have to have certain codes in place. You also have to have certain municipal regulations in place and practices. And so we are working on the municipal side with Public Works. We've actually got an internal committee, and it's Public Works, IT, Police Department, and ComDev and engineering. So it's a huge lift to actually achieve this. And we're seeing this part, which our lighting code is actually in really good shape. So there's not that many actual changes needed, but on the municipal side, we have to convert all our Wellsbach lights that are town owned to be more conforming, to conform to dark sky. So we have two kinds of main fixtures. We have Wellsbach fixtures, which you see in the downtown and some parts outside. And then we have the Providence fixtures, which you see elsewhere. And we're going to be converting all the lights to the Providence that the town owns. Unfortunately, there's some neighborhoods like the Highlands that the town does not own those lights. Those are owned by Excel. So we'll be doing that. That comes with an estimated price tag of like $3.6 million to do those conversions. Because the light fixtures don't even have, it's not just the fixtures, it actually has, it's dimmable and has some controls on them as well. So it's a big lift and a big commitment from the town. To convert the Excel ones, it comes with a giant price tag because there's a lot of complications with Excel not wanting to do it and the town having to basically buy all of them and redo the whole electrical system for them and everything, including trenching and all that good stuff. So we'll talk to the council about that soon, but we don't think that'd be required for certification. So there's also other things on standards, like when the town puts in new lights, what are our standards? So we have to have that all documented and present that to the International Dark Sky Association. So that's kind of where we are on the municipal side. We are looking at additional things such as smart poles that are will lag this process of application. And I don't know if that will go forward. We're trying to analyze if it's useful information for the town to have. The other piece is education. So we have to always have some educational events for the town as a whole on lighting every year that we're certified. So that would be another lift that we'll have to do ongoing. And there's monitoring, of course, as well, that we report out on an annual basis if we get certified. What we see here tonight is the private property side. So our development code. So we've got some changes proposed to the town development code that will apply to private property as well. And that's what you're going to see tonight. And so in these code changes, the underline is the new stuff. And then we've moved a lot of things around because our lighting code was kind of repetitive in a lot of spots you probably saw. So I didn't want to show you underline everywhere. So we did like a squiggly underline, or tried to, when we were just moving everything. So it kind of looks new, but it's really not. So just kind of note that there's not that many changes, just kind of looks that way. So with that, I am going to hand this over to Ellie to go over our development code. And then we had changes in here to the sign code and which kind of we're referencing earlier, and our off-street parking facilities as well. So that would be on private lots.
So Julia, just as a point of clarification, this code is already existing as of 2007. And what has been notated by the underlines or the squiggly underlines, the changes that are being proposed to what's already existing.
So the straight underline is the changes proposed,
Mhm.
the new language. The squiggly underline is existing language, and we've just moved it in different sections of the code to make it flow better than it does currently. So it's current language with this.
So is the assumption that any new construction, new residential construction after 2007 has already been forced to be compliant under this section of the code
Yes. So,
through building department inspections?
yeah, it's planning inspections, but there are new regulations that people will, come into conformance as we got smarter. We have like the Kelvin and things like that.
Mhm.
And from my understanding from the Dark Sky Association that, we're still in good shape with those things. And we've already had the conformance date in for 15 years. So people have 17 years from 2007. So in 2025, they are required anyways, 15 years ago, to come into conformance. So we're that what does change with that is that we'll be looking for them to show us the Kelvin ratings,
Mhm.
for example, in the lumens. So
Thank you.
yeah.
There are quite a few code changes proposed, but most of them are minor code changes of just like some small language changes. But the larger code changes we had listed out for you of limiting color temperature to 2,700 kelvins for residential and 3,000 kelvins for commercial properties, which we added to our lighting zone guidelines. And then we created a lumen per acre maximum on commercial properties of 70,000 lumens per acre for commercial properties over a half an acre in size. And we also, one of the larger changes where the squiggly underline will come into play is we reorganized the lighting zone section to make it easier to navigate and further clarified, because there was a lot of repetitiveness between the three lighting zones, that we moved to a section that just says for all lighting zones generally. So it applies to all of them. We also added more restrictive language for our recreational facility lighting, to limit the use of uplighting on our sports fields. So it's only on when the sport requires it and not on when it's not required. And then it will also be reducing the level of lighting to the amount required for the sport played. So if a sport's being played that doesn't actually require our full level of lighting, we can turn that down, so it's not being as intense on the neighboring properties. We also are implementing a signage lighting curfew based on requirements from Dark Sky that will have a compliance date of January 1st, 2033. And that will just require all sign lighting to be extinguished in half an hour after the close of the business, which follows our bistro lighting having to be extinguished a half an hour after the close of the business. And then for our final 2 points, we are going to be expanding the lighting zone 2. So you can see in this map here, we are proposing some expansion for lighting zone 2 onto Airport Road, as over the past 15 years, we've seen a change of use in Airport Road, and it's become a busier, more commercial and pedestrian area, but is still not an outlier or an important wildlife corridor to the town. So we're proposing expanding lighting zone 2 for those 2 areas, and then allowing bistro lights within lighting zone 2 for the restaurants that are located in the proposed areas as well as the existing areas for lighting zone 2. And then we have a couple questions for the commission.
What page are those questions on?
That is page 31.
And I guess I'd just ask, I know Susan spoke with me earlier. She found some small technical changes. If you have stuff like that, if you could just send those to me, if they're not something the group needs to talk about for time, that would probably be great. Thanks.
So do we want comment from each of the commissioners?
Questions?
Questions, comments?
Exactly. Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Susan?
Thank you. I have a couple of different questions for you. The first one comes up on page 5 of the new changes to the code. In paragraph C.
Page in the packets.
I see it says page 2.
You want the page in the packet? Oh, it's not coming up on my.
Yeah, 5 of 28.
Yes. Yes, it's that paragraph C. So as you said, compliance is required by 2033. The paragraph before talks about things happening by 2025, but in paragraph C, it says all legal non-conforming decorative and bistro lighting can be continued to be used and maintained, but has to be brought into compliance upon either a determination that the legal non-conforming fixture constitutes a public hazard or nuisance, or April 30th, 2012. Obviously, 2012 is long.
So that's decorative or bistro lights only.
Right.
And so everything, oh, that's a good point, because we are changing a little bit of that.
Yeah, I was just wondering why we shouldn't just say you can't do it anymore.
You can't do it.
Because it's 11 years since it could be a legal non-conforming fixture could be used.
You mean strike that section?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say anything
That's
that's
probably
not
fine.
conforming is prohibited.
Or just say that any non-conforming decorative and bistro lighting is prohibited.
We could talk to council about that. We haven't put this through to
Yeah.
our attorney yet, so that's the
Okay,
next step.
well, that would be a suggestion. My second one is in the definition section 912-7. And it has to do with the definition of outline lighting. And that paragraph or that definition is being deleted. So does that mean that outline lighting is no longer permissible? Is that the effect of that?
Yeah, it really ties into what do you call it? Decorative lighting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, but this definition of outline lighting is deleted, so.
Yeah, we were removing it because it was kind of redundant because it was mentioned specifically in architectural lighting and then mentioned specifically in decorative lighting. So in having its own section, it made it a little confusing.
Okay. My next question, will semi-opaque light fixtures continue to be permitted? And that's another definition.
Dark sky did not have any problems with our definition of semi-opaque. It does still have the requirement that the light source is not visible through the walls and is therefore dark sky compliant.
Okay.
I should mention that the International Dark Sky Association has reviewed this and
Mhm.
made their comments.
Okay, great. Okay, my next question is, wait, well, you mentioned that there will be some educational sessions. Is that how the town's going to notify residents and businesses that these changes are happening?
No, so we'll do that with our regular process of readings. And we also, for the conformance, we have that specific website that we just made. I think, I'm not sure if you were at that meeting that we
Yeah.
showed that. So that's where we'll be pointing people. We're hiring an intern next summer to kind of help with that effort of meeting with people specifically after taking an assessment of what's conforming, what's not in town. And as far as educational though, for the certification, that is after certification. And it's to have like lighting education events like throughout the year, or at least once a year. So it's probably going to be, we might tie it in with some BCA events and kind of make it fun. It's not like a code related thing.
Yeah.
So it's more of a fun educational piece, is what we'll try to do. We might do some light walks with the citizens and things like that, and just kind of educate them on lighting.
Okay, so then certification and
So
this new section of the code are going to be two different.
yeah, the certification, we have to submit kind of all our municipal plan for conformance. We have to submit, our lighting code needs to be in conformance with the community requirements. And then and there's a bunch of other things, and we have to submit it all to the International Dark Sky Association. And then, they give us comments or certify us. And that certification is totally separate, the code is part of the application.
Oh, so that the code won't be final until they approve it or give us
No, we're going to
changes?
they've already done that.
Oh,
We've
okay.
already run it through them.
Okay.
But there's a lot of pieces to the application.
Oh, I'm sure. I'm just trying to
So we need to
understand
get this passed.
if this will go into effect before we get
Yes.
the certification.
Yes, it will.
Okay, that's what I wanted to understand.
We have to have it done prior to applying.
Okay. Okay, so then
So-
people will have to make changes consistent with these rules before we get the certification,
No,
or they'll,
nope. So municipalities have 5 years to come into conformance on their municipal lights after certification, and it takes about a year to get certified. So we're talking, we'll be certified maybe in the end of 2024 or early 2025. And private property is 10 years. So that's why you see the 10 years on the sign curfew. Because we wanted to adjust to that. And but we did not change the conformance date we've already had in place for 15 years for private property, because everybody has already anticipated that.
okay.
How do you reconcile those two dates? You're talking about 2034 versus 2025. If I
Yeah,
understand what you're saying.
So the only one that we had in there that is new is the sign light curfew that they have. So that we did 10 years, and the other one we didn't touch.
So all the other light fixtures have to go in 2025.
Correct. And that's been on the books for 15 years.
Okay.
So we didn't want to mess with that.
Okay, my last question, and this relates to the questions that you had for the commission. How would colored holiday lights fit under the dark sky requirements? Would that affect our application for certification?
No, they allowed bistro lights and decorative lights. Like I said, they've looked at this. Let me give you a little background on the colored lights. So we used to allow colored lights. And then I think it was in 2012, we changed it based on some feedback from the council. the council didn't like the messy look of like all different colors all over the place on Main Street. And, you know, you had 0 lot line buildings and it just looked messy. So at that time, white, warm white and soft lights went into effect. And that's where you saw that lighting conformance for bistro and decorative lights. So that was tied in with that code change. So right now, all that's allowed is warm white lights for decorative lights. And
Aren't there some places that have trees with blue lights in them?
well, those aren't allowed. So what the question is what our thought was maybe that went a little far in the residential areas because it was written to cover the entirety of the town. But if the concern is really the historic district area, the downtown, then maybe that can stay white, the warm white lights. But then the question is, would we want to open it up? Would we want to recommend to council that colored lights are fine outside of zones 1 and 2, and the residential areas can do, you know, the multicolored lights or whatever they want in their house? It's kind of the intent of that question.
There been any consideration of allowing the colored lights, you know, during the holiday season, like Thanksgiving to sometime in January?
Yeah, so we
people could
allow
do
decorative
the
lights.
colored ones, just having those limited for a certain time on Main Street.
You know, put in whatever we want.
Yeah, right. I think it'd be nice. I think it's nice to have a little color, but
But I don't know about downtown. I don't think that's going to go over well.
okay.
If you're talking residential, then I think that has a better chance.
Okay.
Okay. Well, that was my last question. Thank you.
Thanks. Good questions.
Great question.
Mike, do you have any
Thank you,
questions or
Chair.
comments?
Thank you, Julia and Ellie. Really nice work. I too am concerned about decorative lighting in downtown. And I just wonder if there's an additional metric or guideline that we could put on that would limit the overall number of decorative lights. I don't know if it's an overall lumens count or overall number of lights count, but something akin to the 70,000 lumens on an acre, which I think is about a 1.5 foot candles, 2 foot candles. Because there's just a gaudy proliferation of decorative lighting in downtown Breck, and would be one of the few opportunities we would have to rein that in.
I think that would be just, I mean, I want to hear from the rest of the commission. Decorative lighting is very important to the town council. That's one thing we heard is if it nixes decorative lighting, we're not doing the certification. So we looked into that a lot and, you know, have a comfort level with the Dark Sky Association with our decorative lighting. But that is a comment we got when we asked about the certification. So I think it's difficult in the historic district with the 0 lot lines.
Would you, pardon me, but would you explain, what do you mean it's difficult in the district because of the 0 lot lines?
Because of 0 lot lines, you're going to have some light off the property. So that's just what's going to happen because of the 0 lot lines. But the council's also very concerned and did not want to limit the holiday lights on our trees and things like that. Now we've worked with Public Works and we could, and that's going to be in our municipal code, the town lights. But we're working with Public Works and our lighting contractor that the town uses on maybe like shutting lights off at a certain time, or trying to start experimenting with different options. Because we have 5 years to conform, but they're good with our lights.
Then, so to summarize my comment, I we work for council. But I would like to see some kind of metric that manages the overall decorative lighting.
Okay, we can definitely note that.
Think about
Mhm.
it. Thank you. Thanks, Chair.
I guess the follow-up, are you concerned? Follow-up, are you concerned mostly about intensity or just duration of how long decorative lights are,
Intensity
Out.
and number.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
but not so
location.
much like the time frame of,
No, the timeframe's curious in that you have Bistro, May 1 to October 31, holiday, November 1 to the end of ski season. I probably would have put April 30th because sometimes ski season runs long up on peak 8. And then you're consistent with how you're starting and stopping that. But no, I mean, I look at a lot of historic districts and I get it, but I think Breck has too many decorative lights outlining buildings and handrails and light, window surrounds and on and on. I think less would be more here. Thanks.
Thanks.
Alan, do you have any questions and or comments?
Thank you, Chair. I do. I couldn't find, do we address motion activated lights or is it just the light that the motion sensor controls has to be compliant?
I believe it's mentioned that motion activated lights are not allowed to have light that trespasses onto a neighboring property.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, I
more
think
in the
that's-
security section of the lighting code.
I thought there was also a time limit on how long the light could stay illuminated. Like 30 minutes.
In the security, yes.
Oh, there it is. Okay. Yeah, so fully shielded light source. Okay, that's fine. I just wonder if it should say the light controlled by the sensor needs to comply with the conditions above or elsewhere in this section. Yeah, having a motion sensor light doesn't mean you can have a huge, floodlight.
Agreed.
The next thing is there's nothing in law in the I mean, this would be outside of this, but light bleeding from unincorporated town that borders our town, there's really no control on if the source is coming from unincorporated county property.
We cannot, but the county is potentially interested in becoming certified as well.
Got it.
Which would
Okay.
be awesome. But I don't know when or they'd get there.
Got it. And the Christmas decorative lights, there is a curfew for that as well. That needs to be turned off at certain times.
No.
No.
There's not. What I had mentioned was our municipal lights. We're looking at potentially trying some things out with our contractors this year.
Because I think I know that Wellington HOA, although it's not enforced, I think has curfew for holiday lights. Although no one has timers, everyone just has to remember to unplug them. But I would like to have the town maybe consider maybe in certain areas, just, a curfew on the lights.
Okay.
It could be certain days of the week. I know during peak times it's great, but I mean, I don't see any reason for the decorative lights to be on once the bars close at night downtown. And I guess if the lights in zone 1 or 2 are going to be just the warm light, then I guess is it the dispensary building that has all those green lights on Airport Road?
So
Mhm.
I think it's
So
down there.
and then does the zone 2 expansion include Continental Court?
no, that's in the county.
Oh, it's county. That's right. I'm sorry. I should know that. Okay, that's all I've got. Thank you.
You.
Stephen.
Bad one to sleep. Well, I think we have an opportunity here to make some really significant changes. And I agree with Michael completely that we're overlit everywhere. And it's not that hard to just cut back a little bit and come up with some standards for this stuff. For example, the curfew for turning off the lights doesn't come into play for 10 years. Why can't that happen next week? That you turn your lights off at a certain time. I think we can be aggressive on this. I think we can bring these things into play a lot sooner than we are. There was, in my opinion, we made a big mistake in extending the compliance period to get dark sky lighting, and we shouldn't be wasting time, and we should be doing these things. But looking at some specific things, I'm concerned with the semi-opaque lighting fixtures and why we have those at all as being permitted. And Julie, I'll defer to you. You've done a lot more work on dark sky, but under my understanding of dark sky, a semi-opaque fixture doesn't qualify as a dark sky compliant fixture.
I can let Ellie kind of address that because she actually had conversations with the Dark Sky Association on it. These are their comments, by the way, on that definition.
Yeah, so all of the added wording and clarifying wording through the in the semi-opaque definition is comments that they had on our writing. So they were okay with the semi-opaque light fixture because the light source is not visible through the walls. It is part of the wording of the definition. And it does have like frosted or colored glass that like allows some light through, but it's more diffused. So it is still considered dark sky compliant.
It's below the bulb.
Mhm.
So you'd have the fixture and then there's glass that hangs below, right? That's what the semi-opaque is referring to in this definition. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. And it doesn't specify that the fixture is below the bulb. It just says the light source is not visible through the walls. I can use an example, right? With these sconces all around here. Turn those guys upside down and then they're downcast. That's dark sky compliant. Does being able to see the light through there make them non-compliant?
Yes, like you can see the bulb there.
Right.
For that light fixture to be compliant, it would have to have, since it's all frosted, the light source would have to be essentially in that, I don't know if it's bronze bracket or whatever. It was like a really thin light source and shining down.
So if you can see through the semi-opaque material, a slightly brighter, say, circle that outlines the light bulb, it would become non-compliant.
Yeah, I mean, for the time that we've had this implemented, how we've reviewed lights for being, we used to use the term fully cut off and shielded. We'd have lots that, you have your metal component up top and you have your lighting source, generally an LED. And one of the popular styles is either kind of a mesh shroud going below or a frosted glass. But as long as that bulb was up in the metal and shining down where you didn't have a bulb hanging within that, then that was a compliant, fully shielded light. I'm sure Ethan has heard that many times from, well, probably early on, you probably heard it once or twice, but
Many times.
but I think part of the reason why dark sky is agreeable is because, if you didn't have that glass there and the light source was at the same spot, you'd still have the same light source coming down. You wouldn't have anything kind of guiding it. Another part is, I think to be more agreeable with more people, it just allows a greater variety of lighting styles. Like when you just have a fully shielded, it's all metal or something, it really cuts down the amount of lights. And you know, when people are picking lights out, there's obviously the aesthetic of when they're on, but a lot of the aesthetic too is during the day when you're walking up of what that fixture looks like on the house. And I think they're looking at the functionality of it
Just-
being.
Yeah, to
downcast.
clarify too,
Building code is that every exterior, you have a light going out. And the purpose of that is to illuminate the stairs which may be there, so people don't go out in the dark and fall down. So you need to have some amount of light that spills from those fixtures. If you just have a canister of light that goes straight down, it doesn't deal with the purpose of public safety or private safety in a residential situation.
if you look how it's used in the code, section 91211 for lighting standards for all the zones, it says just number one, only fully shielded, downcast, semi-opaque or opaque fixtures with no portion of the bulb visible are permitted. So that hopefully will clarify what Chris is saying. But that's how it's used in the code.
If I may, I think what you're getting at, that semi-opaque, what so often happens is that downcast light, when you add a semi-opaque glass below it, that gets lit up. But as long as you can't see the bulb.
But doesn't that reflect it out just like a bulb would? I mean, I can design something so it spreads the light out, just like the light bulbs there. So, I mean, we're not really fooling anybody with this.
I agree completely with Chris and Ethan. And my concept of the dark sky compliant light, the bulb had to be within the non-opaque portion of the fixture. That's not what this definition says.
The
Section says.
Yeah, the definition is just defining what a semi-opaque light fixture is. And then if you go into our lighting zone guidelines, that specifies that all light fixtures have to be fully shielded downcast, and it mentions those semi-opaque fixtures.
But it's not clear that if it's semi-opaque, whether it's visible or not.
It says the bulb cannot be visible. On, what was it, 9/12/11,
11.
number one.
I would argue it's vague.
That's my concern, but
Yep.
you know, I understand, and I think that they've come up with really great solutions for lights that use the downcast light to create an effect of light trespass and light transfer. But I think if the test is what can you see through the glass, then you're going to look at, I have a neighbor with about 12 outside lights and the glass is probably semi-opaque, but inside each semi-opaque piece of glass, if you look, you'll see the round light bulb. So are those compliant or not compliant?
Those would not.
Or not.
Not compliant.
That's the definition.
Okay.
However,
It's not.
I would say, I think
Someone's gonna argue
also
that.
what we're getting at. You can, and I don't know how you could regulate this, but you can design a light that has a semi-opaque glass below the shield that is designed in such a way that it reflects that light out.
Yeah, that's right.
And I don't know how you would write this to
You could even shine it right back up.
deal with that other than to say fully shielded, period.
In some ways, it is kind of already considering that because we're not allowing fully opaque light fixtures. We're allowing semi-opaque, which is already diffusing that light some. So with it being downcast and then semi-opaque below that, it's not going to be as brightly like spread out as if it were fully opaque.
And there's also a code section that would prohibit you casting light off your property. So any type of fixture you came up with that spread light, even if it was down and then out, would not be allowed.
Could we limit the wattage or whatever the comparable thing is now for LEDs that would be within the fixture to make sure that
That's in there. 950 lumens or 60 watts equivalent.
Mhm.
All right, let's see.
Yeah, it's 950
Oh,
lumens
right.
for
Okay, I
LEDs,
see that.
15 watts for
Yeah.
fluorescent, and then 60 for incandescent.
And I guess my point was that you've got 9-12-11A1, which is the code section that Ethan pointed out. And then you struck 9-12-12A1, which says single-family residential exterior lighting shall be fully shielded, downcast, and opaque with no bulb visible. Now, that's what we have. And that's what, at least in my development, they have to pass that standard with the fixtures they put on the homes. And the kind that Ethan talks about qualify because it meets all of these requirements. So isn't that a better definition? And did we take a step backwards and say more light versus what was already written?
We removed that definition because we found it to be redundant because it's already explained in the lighting zones, which I do notice that it doesn't say semi-opaque there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Take a look at it, Steve, or
Yeah.
we can talk about the semi-opaque stuff with.
I really think, and I brought this up before, and I know that the planning department thinks it'd be difficult to enforce, but I don't see any reason why we can't have a curfew for residential nighttime lighting. And Mark says he has a timer to turn off his Christmas lights. Sometimes the Christmas lights are brighter than the regular lights, and they're on all night because people go to bed and just leave them on.
I've got a timer for my exterior lights too. They're on all year.
Very, very easy to do. But people don't do it. We have lighting, exterior lighting at the rear of homes that casts its light out into the wetlands area. And one of the goals we're trying to achieve is pages of this. Page 33, 9-12-2 findings, paragraph C, protecting the wildlife populations living within the town and surrounding areas that depend on the night sky and a natural level of darkness at night. You're not doing that if you let them burn their lights on all over their back of their porch all night out into the wetlands areas. So a curfew would solve a lot of things, and yeah, it's hard to enforce, but you can give people like us in the Highlands the ability to do our own enforcement if the town has rules that provide for it. And we can make it work. But if there's no rules.
I have a comment to add to that. So I did some research in Park City. They, all residential holiday lights have to be off at 11 and commercial have to be off at midnight. So I think we should adopt that.
Was that holiday lights or all lights?
The lights. Yeah.
I guess I'd like to hear from the commissioners if you think the send council a recommendation for a residential or commercial light curfew for all lights.
Yes.
Yep. Definitely here.
Yes, everybody.
Yep.
Having said that, the number is going to be the point of contention. Is it 10 o'clock? Is it 11 o'clock? Is it midnight?
Park City says midnight for commercial, 11 o'clock for residential. I just propose that as a starting point.
Yeah.
Right.
But
That's residential. Holiday lights are 11 o'clock.
But holiday lights only.
Yeah, holiday lights only.
Yeah, I guess like a good question to Mark's point earlier about building code. Could you, in theory, force a curfew on lighting if it's required to have it by code, by doors and other things like, I'm just thinking, I'm thinking out loud.
There's safety issues.
I'm not saying for all, but.
Chris, I think
they're
that's a different
suggesting-
situation.
Yeah.
The code says that, and this is the International Building Code says that you must have a light that you can turn on by a switch when you leave a property. Now, that doesn't mean that that needs to be on all the time. I think everybody has lights that come on so that when you come home at night and you drive up to your garage or you walk up to your front door, there's some illumination. And those are the things that could go off at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, whatever's decided. But the type of thing that I'm suggesting where you have a back door, you get up in the middle of the night, you gotta let your dog out. You throw the switch. You have to be mindful enough to throw the switch off, but that's incremental in terms of all the lights on the outside of the house. So I don't think those things are inconsistent with one another.
Yeah, and there are many people in this community, particularly second homeowners, who leave their outdoor lights on constantly.
Right.
Yeah, and
Security.
you know, I think, you know, we can have some kind of limit on that. I wouldn't limit it just to holiday lights.
And understand that a lot of that decision is made by property managers who are sending renters up to those houses at all times of the night. They might get in at Denver at 10 o'clock and not arrive till 1 o'clock for their stay. And that's the reason they're doing it. I'm not saying that's right, but that's the reason that's being done.
Well, you know, there may be specific cases, but you know, I'm talking about lights that are on for months at a time.
You also have like multifamily residential, you know, what we consider residential as far as lodging in our land use code and things like that. So that it gets difficult. And I guess it sounds like the planning commission says curfew on holiday lights, but also sounds like just building lights, exterior lights, period.
I'm certainly in it for an inclusive curfew,
I agree.
all lighting. If there's a commercial or a multifamily residential that needs to have a light in a stairwell, hey, I can live with that. It's just these lights that are on all the time for no reason. Nobody's going in and out of my house at night. I don't need the lights on. Like Mark says, you flip them on if you have to. You flip them off when you're done.
So are you talking for lighting zone 3? Which is, or are you talking
Yes.
lighting zones 1 and 2?
Well,
3
I'm-
for the most.
3 is a top priority, but I think we can shut them off everywhere.
What about motion sensors? Or like when you drive up to those, because they're wanting the light to be on when guests arrive. And
Yeah.
if you don't have a motion sensor, it's just dark. And then you're getting out of your car in the dark, slipping on the ice. I don't know.
Not opposed to motion sensors. Those are time
Yeah.
limited.
I
I
mean,
think that's a function of somebody making some intelligent decisions about how the lights are wired. Because if you have lights that illuminate your front porch or whatever, that's a different light than the light that comes on in your driveway as you drive up. And that could be on a different circuit. The other circuit that illuminates the whole house could be on a timer. And that's just a matter of having an electrician figure that out.
So maybe we have a curfew for all lights on the house and some of them can have motion sensors and it's okay for them to go on for an hour or whatever, something like that.
on for a minute.
Yeah. most
Okay,
motion
yeah, or whatever,
detectors just-
but we could put that in the code so that their light goes on at 1, it's not breaking the rules, right?
It's easy enough to just say a motion detector is exempt from that curfew regulation. Because, by definition, a motion sensor is only going to go on momentarily. They don't stay on for an hour.
Okay,
They
Yeah,
go on, they
sounds
go off. That's not the problem that Steve's proposing that we try to solve.
So that's for lighting zone 3, it sounds like. And so 1 is like our commercial core and 2 is kind of just adjacent to, for the most part, commercial areas. What are your thoughts there?
Curfew.
Can you repeat that, Julia? Sorry.
Oh, I'm hearing this for lighting zone 3 because you keep talking about houses. So when you're getting into lighting zone 1 and 2, you're talking about commercial buildings, commercial properties that are open till, 2 or whatever, and have staff leaving later than that. So I can tell you that public, or police department will have issues with some of this proposal, in lighting zone 1 and 2. And I'm trying to understand, is the planning commission just talking about these curfews for lighting zone 3? Or are you talking about 1 and 2?
I think a great first step is to attack lighting zone 3. And then if you want to come back and take another bite at the apple later on, we could certainly do that.
Can you work? Oh, go ahead.
You've got a curfew built into this for the business lighting.
Just the signs.
That's okay. That's a start. Why can't all the lights go off except at a certain time when the signs go off?
Can you work with the police and fire maybe? Because it sounds like we're going to be spending a lot of money on replacing lights, that maybe they can have some input into the lighting in that main corridor.
Well, that's why I'm saying this, is
Yeah.
because the police department is part of our internal lighting committee that we're working with on streetlights. And so there are safety concerns out there.
But you're not talking
So
about streetlights.
I'm not talking about
Yeah, we're not talking about streetlights.
I know, but you're talking about people leaving work, kind of out late, walking around, and it being no light.
Well, you don't shut the lights off till people leave. That's when the curfew is, isn't that what?
Okay, so people are leaving work at 3 a.m. from bars and restaurants.
Well, when are they supposed to turn their signs on?
The signs are supposed to turn off a half an hour after business is closed, which that's a dark sky requirement. We had to have that.
Yeah, we have to have that. And that's just the sign. That's not like access points. So there's, I'm worried about the safety here, and I think that's going to be echoed.
Well,
So
again,
I'm
we're
trying to
talking
get at what you're wanting in the commercial district. to Ask.
Business closes, a half hour later, the signs go out. But people are gonna still be in there working for more hours and hours.
Correct.
So we need safe access streetlights for them to get to their parked car.
More than
right?
streetlights, because people walk down the sidewalk, it's icy, it's dark.
Yeah.
There's so much, if you were the waitress, you were gonna go, leave the business and make it to your car. And you're gonna leave and you're gonna walk through the alley and you're gonna walk through, well, first you gotta leave the door. You go through the property, then you go through another property, right? Because you cross Main Street, you go through another way to get to the parking lot, and there's no lights on except the street
It
lights.
seems like you need kind of a task force to look at like what lights actually light the sidewalks and how you're gonna.
We do have that.
Okay, well then,
But
are all these like
the private
lights on the
property is
stores
a
lighting
different
that?
issue.
Yeah, you have to consider like parking lots on private property are sometimes going to be lit up by building lights. So if we have those lights off, then those parking lots are going to be dark for the waitresses, other employees that might be leaving later at night.
I just make a suggestion that I think this recommendation would be better received from the council if you did kind of what Mark was saying and focus on zone 3 to start with, and then say, continue to evaluate the downtown for maybe at some future time, there's some type of curfew that might be applicable.
Yeah, I would be in favor of that.
But what about the holiday lights or decorative lights?
So, I've been reading, we measure and quantify the lumens on incident lights, flagpoles, signs, public art, overhead walkways, gas stations, sports fields, security lighting. And yet we have no metric or no guideline or no maximum on, holiday lights. There is a really good example, though, under G, architectural accent lighting on page 10. It limits architectural feature lighting to 90 lumens per property.
So part of that is accessibility for like the regular homeowner. I looked into like limiting our decorative lights by kelvins, but they don't really operate in kelvins. It'll just say warm white or soft white.
Right?
So like it doesn't really get into the specifics. And like if you're a residential property owner, usually you're buying these lights, hanging them up yourself. You're not going to be somebody who knows how to measure the foot candles and the lumens of the specific lights that you're buying. You'd have to like hire a contractor or a designer to measure that. So like it makes sense in those other definitions because that's usually something that's being designed and is more permanent and therefore kind of more intentional and is easier to determine that foot candle and lumens. But decorative lighting is much more temporary and done on a person by person basis.
Perhaps for residential, but really I think what I'm hearing is we're concerned about the central core zone 1 being overlit. And you do have examples of where you have at least a dozen examples of where you limit the total lumens of lighting types, but you allow string decorative lighting all around the perimeter of buildings and no real limit on it. So I think you have a loophole in your lighting criteria. And I'm encouraging you to think about overall limits on decorative lighting.
Yeah, there's no size limit for the light bulbs on the decorative lighting either. So you can get those hugeenormous bulbs, you know?
Yeah.
That was something I wrote down. I don't know, you can buy light meters that are not very expensive. Is that something the library could have that, you know, HOAs could check out? I mean, I have no idea where we are in our neighborhood. Be nice to have
The way a
something
lot
like
of
that.
this works is a competing business puts holiday lights all around their building, and you think as a business owner, as a building owner, to get attention to your building, you're going to match that. And then you get a proliferation of decorative lighting all over buildings, and you have no metric, no control, no limit.
Well, I applaud the initiative. I think it's entirely appropriate. I think it's a great idea. And if we can become one of those dark sky communities in the world, one of the few in the world, I think it's great for Breckenridge. I think it'll be great for the commercial aspects of the town. It's just an opportunity to really drill down, and there's some low-hanging fruit out there that I think can be picked off pretty easily. That's just the way I'm looking at it.
Some ways, lighting is one of the easiest, most effective ways to really dress up the built environment. I mean, I think you're absolutely on the right path, and I'm very supportive of this.
Alan, did you have any comments?
I'm all set. Thank you.
I have some comments. First of all, I echo the sentiment that the downtown core is overlit. My take on that is that it's the holiday lighting. And I also understand both councils and everybody's attraction to having all these holiday lights. It's the Kingdom of Breckenridge. It's Christmas year round. That's great. But I would be interested in looking at the potential of maybe some timers or a curfew on some of those lights. Obviously all safety lighting has to be in place, and I have no problem with that. When it comes to zone 3, though, I have some other thoughts in that I am very sensitive to lighting. I don't like it. I like dark but being someone who builds residential houses in zone 3, I have clients who want to light up their house, and for 2 reasons. One, security. A lot of these people are coming from the city and they feel that they need to have their house lit up. Okay, the other thing is, and architects do this, and I've done it, but you want to light up your house so that you can take a pretty picture at night. And in so doing, we have these houses where I have one right now that we're putting 18 decorative sconces on the house, 18. One of the things that happens oftentimes, yes, you have to have a light by every exit, but that exit is on the left side of a gable end. And so, well, you got to have one on the right side because it has to balance. My point being, we're overlighting these residential houses. Now, I know we've addressed that in limiting the amount of can lighting that we can put in and the heights of the 15-foot height and so on and so forth. But I think that we can look at these sconces and talk about that some as well. The other thing is landscape lighting. I don't see any limitation on landscape lighting. And both permanent landscape lighting, but I see in my neighborhood, people put up those, you go down to Home Depot or Lowe's and you buy those little stick in the ground, and they're everywhere. And I find it to be an issue. I personally don't turn on any lights on the outside of my house at all because I don't need any. My neighbors lit my place up so big that I don't need a light. So, and also bistro lighting has spread into Zone 3, specifically in my neighborhood, but I see it a lot, and there's no control over that. And that is obviously not in compliance with dark sky at all. And those get left on all the time. So that brings me to enforcement on all this. We can write codes, we can do all this stuff, but how do we keep it under control? And I don't have that answer, except that maybe we need to budget a lighting czar. And we laugh, but you laugh, but none of this is going to happen because the point of the competition is real. Case in point, we all know the green light down on Airport Road. And that was obviously a competition thing because all the Green Mile was already on the other side of the street when those guys opened up, and they needed to bring people down there, right? And that thing has lit up the world. Which brings me to my third point. If that section, how is that? That is in lighting zone 3, Airport Road, proposed to be put into lighting zone 2. If it was in lighting zone, I'm trying to understand how that lighting was allowed and how it will fall in moving forward if it goes into lighting zone 2. That makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the lights have the time frame, the date frame. But they they should be all white lights.
So you're saying that the green lights on Airport Road are not in compliance?
Correct.
In my tenure here, there was a conversation with town council, and town council has allowed those because they're not allowed to have their green neon. That is normal of Colorado statute. I don't know. But what you would normally see of those internally lit neon signs, yeah, the medical symbol, We don't allow those in Breckenridge. So in my tenure, I've heard town council say that they allow those green lights. But I don't know if there's a formal something that is just point of
They
information.
originally had the cross symbol out there and we told them they had to take it off, that was commercial advertising.
And so they lit up the world, and it's my ex-girlfriend has a condo right across the street. And when I was there, we would have to black out the lights or the windows because it was just unbelievable. Anyway, I won't go too far on that. What was my other point here?
Czar.
Mike, you do a great job at that. Yeah, those are my comments.
Thanks.
You brought up a comment about regulating the sconces. What did you mean exactly by that?
I was mostly talking about the number.
Okay.
We already a few years back regulated can lighting in soffits. Those are no longer allowed in residential. In addition, we put in a maximum of 15 feet off of average grade, right? Or finished
Yeah,
grade.
and then a set has to be set in if it's an overhang.
Right, except for in trees, but because we used to put can lights all around houses and light them up. That has now been transferred to sconces. Well, we can't put in can lights, so we'll put in a whole bunch of sconces all around this house so we can light it up. Can we look at reining that in somewhat?
Your third point,
Let me say this, but
your third point was landscape lighting isn't addressed.
is what?
Is not addressed.
Yes, and I did see that landscape lighting was not addressed at all, and there's room to light up the world there too.
I believe it's meant to be included under architectural accent lighting, but we can add clarifying language for that.
The other thing I was just going to clarify was that bistro lights are not allowed in lighting zone 3 at all. It's only in 1 or 2 that have approved exterior food and beverage areas, like approved on a site plan.
I'm aware of that.
Okay.
But I've got neighbors who have bistro lights strung up all over the place. And
of landscape lighting is pretty much captured by the fact that you can't have uplighting. And 90% of all landscape lighting plans have uplighting on the trees. So I think that's really capturing that. Won't capture what you're talking about, the Home Depot solar.
but even downcast, I mean, a lot of people like to put a line of lights alongside their driveway and then all over their back, and they're downcast and they're only this high off the ground. But you put enough of them and reflective light is making light pollution.
That brings me to my point, whenever you're done, what I want to talk about.
Anyway, I've said my piece.
I'm surprised no one's brought this up, being the last person here. So I did a little research over the weekend and I learned that fresh snow reflects, guess how much light back up into the sky?
98%.
80%.
Wow.
So like all this stuff we're doing in the winter, it's really not going to be very effective for keeping dark sky. So I think we need to maybe even tighten up our amount of light that's allowed, like these light meters and stuff like that. Maybe you don't need as much light because it's white all the time, right? I can tell you, my husband and I would go to the rec center every morning about 5:30. You see tons of light. And if it's at all like foggy, you can just see these light beams going up. Airport road's really bad. So anyway, you can be more aggressive than the dark sky standard. I think we really need to consider that. A couple communities like Suffolk, New York, they don't allow residential over 2,200 Kelvin. So they're saying that you have to have it that low for the animals. So I think the 2,700 is a little high, in my opinion. but I'm no expert. I've just done a little research. Have you all looked at that as far as like animals and the Kelvin ratings?
We haven't looked at it specifically with animals, but the Kelvin ratings that we chose were partially based off of the dark sky standard, which actually limits it to 3,000, I believe. But we looked at what other dark sky certified communities have done, and that's where we came up with the 2,700 number for residential.
Real hard pressed to go find a 2,200 Kelvin light bulb anywhere.
I have one. I have one on my.
No, I have a company that's all they
I
do.
think 2,700 is good though.
Um,
I wouldn't go to Home Depot and find
We
one.
got a Lowe's in Silverpool.
I think it'd be nice
700 is good. You could do better.
to have something that kind of shows the different colors to pass it along. And also on the other side, I found you can get covers for these bistro lights so the light doesn't go up. And I think that would be really great to require in the summertime because people like to see the stars.
Yeah,
So I'll just pass this around.
our bistro lights are required to be downcast. So like the ones that we have between town hall and the professional building are a great example of the downcast bistro lights.
So what makes it downcast? Does it have this little metal covering over it?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see that. Maybe you should specify what downcast is. I'm gonna pass this along just in case you guys want to look at it. Let's see, what else did I have here? So I belong to HOA at Stonehaven. Our houses are all right next to each other. And I don't know how we're gonna ever meet the standard of what is it, one candle foot or whatever it is, foot candle per boundary there. So I don't know if we need to put something special in for these neighborhoods where we're right next to each other for exceptions. It says if there's like, access or sidewalks, it's okay, but I mean, our houses are right next to each other, so.
Regulated at the perimeter boundary, not your house, like footprint property.
Perimeter of the whole neighborhood.
Correct. For lighting in a commercial or in a residential subdivision like that one, where they have a perimeter boundary for the setbacks.
Okay, but it is also annoying, like when neighbors leave their like upper deck light on all night, it's in your face all night. So I don't know, things to think about. I mentioned maybe having light meters at the library that people could check out for HOA just to walk around and see like, oh, what's our sign? Does it meet the Kelvin requirement or what is it,
We, as part of our dark sky certification and continuing to have that, we'll have to have light meters and be monitoring our light levels at different points within the town. So that could be something that we could look at.
So can HOAs request someone to come do that for them? Or is that something we have to hire someone to do?
I don't know that I mean, it's hard to say, but we obviously have a small staff.
Right.
So the enforcement piece is difficult also because of the timing of when it would need to be enforced. And we have
Chapin back.
staff limitations.
Other dark sky communities have done, as part of their education stuff, they've actually educated community members on how to use the light meters and take their own light readings to have the community really helping and involved in keeping that continued certification. So that could be something that we look at.
Okay, I like that. Talked about snow reflection. As far as the residential bistro lights, you guys are getting rid of all of it. And I think it'd be nice if people could use it, but maybe have them on a timer for 2 hours or something like that. Because it is really nice to sit out back of your house for a couple hours and have dinner. I don't know if your sign requirement for lighting is for HOA and neighborhood lighting of their signs. Is it just for commercial signs?
I remember how that's written. I thought
I
it was for
believe it's
businesses.
just for commercial, but let me look. Oh, all signage.
Okay, good. Another thing was, I noticed, since I get up early in the morning, like you go by Upper Blue and they have a skylight and they have all this light on in there all the time. And so maybe skylights in commercial buildings, people have to turn off their lights. So it's not shining up in the sky.
It's very hard to regulate inside a building. Like we've had that issue.
Not
with some
awake
other
at 5
places
in the
town.
morning.
In addition, it's a school, which would be exempt from any of our regulations to begin with by state statute.
Oh. Okay, well then never mind. But maybe if it's other buildings, maybe we can just ask them to turn it off. That is all I have, but I thank you for all you're doing. I think this is great. I do like the colored lights for a limited time period, not the whole winter for the decorative lights though.
Alan, did we hear from you?
You gave me a chance. I had nothing really to add. I concur with what my fellow commissioners have said. I think I'd like to see more curfews on the lights. I think I would prefer not eliminating the colored lights in zone 1 and 2. And Elaine has a good suggestion of only, certain amount of the holiday period in zone 3. I commend the council and staff for pushing this ahead. I think it's a great move going forward.
I have a comment about section 912-4 legislative findings regarding elimination of non-conforming lighting fixtures. I would encourage the town council to go back and perhaps revise those 3 paragraphs. Paragraph A is a really weak attempt at a cost-benefit analysis. And I think that it would be much better for the town council to make a very affirmative statement that this is something that we believe in and that we understand that the residents and the businesses are going to have costs associated with that, but we think that this is a good thing moving forward. It's a more positive or more affirmative way of than trying to explain that there's benefits. Everybody can perceive that, and if they don't, the town's moving forward anyway. And B, whoever wrote that about the depreciation really doesn't understand the accounting concept of depreciation, and they really should just take that out because it's kind of embarrassing.
I didn't really want to touch this section because I don't want people to feel like we're changing it, the conformance. So we purposely didn't do much other than point out that it was approved in 2007.
Okay.
Because of that, I don't want people to feel like we are imposing this on them all of a sudden and all this language has changed. So that's why we didn't change this. I don't know if people think that it's okay or people might take it the wrong way that we made a bunch of changes. Just, it's more public perception and public interpretation if we make changes to a pretty stringent section already.
Yeah, these sections also are important if someone were to sue the town over these requirements. It's a statement of why we believe the costs are outweighed by the benefits.
So you think it should be changed?
No.
or- Okay. Anybody else?
No, it's good.
That was my only, I was just nervous to touch it much. We're already going to argue with everybody that we had talked to.
Okay, should we move on to the town council?
You.
Thank you.
Do we want official answers for all of the questions or?
Yeah, do we
kind
need
of
to answer those
covered it?
questions? Or have we done that?
Yeah. Were they?
Sure.
At least for 1 and 2.
Holiday lights allowed in colored holiday lights in residential zone 3.
What was that, page 31?
Well, it's
Yeah.
page 2 of the memo.
31.
Page 31 of the packet.
Want to go down the line?
The commission believe the colored holiday lights should be allowed in residential areas. So do we want to go through and have everybody address all 3 questions?
Third's already.
Yeah, the third's already answered, so pretty much just 1
Susan,
and
let's
2.
start with you.
Before we move to that, we never really talked about much about this holiday, this colored lights. So it was mentioned a little bit. I just want a little clarification. So right now, as I understand it, colored lights were not allowed throughout the town, but it was mostly aimed at the core area. Is that how I understood you? You said
Yeah,
you
that
were-
was more the concern, was more the core, I
Mhm.
think. Although there might have been examples, some examples outside in zone 3.
And okay, and so why are why is this question coming up? Is there been pressure to change this?
One,
Colored lights,
I think people are already doing it.
do everything.
And honestly, part of it too is that white lights aren't necessarily great for wildlife. The white holiday lights. So if you had something like, for example, red, that's actually the color for that's
Neutral.
better for humans and wildlife. So part of me was thought, maybe some non-white lights might be okay outside of the district or outside in zone
Zone
3
3.
where it's darker. But you can stick with white too.
All right, thank you.
What about those spotlights that people put on their house to make it like green or red, and like at Halloween, they have those ones that like put ghosts on their walls and.
our decorative lights are specifically called out as string lights, and anything that's like a projection is not really allowed in our code.
Okay.
Okay. Susan, go first.
Okay. So, as far as the colored holiday lights, I do feel that people are gonna do that no matter what. And in the residential area only. And I don't know that it's, at least if we limited it during the holiday period, I don't think it's worth telling people they can't do it. Whether lighting zone 3 should be expanded to airport road, so that would,
It's actually lighting zone
Zone
2.
Yeah, typo.
Yep, my apologies.
oh, right.
It's that orange.
Zone 3?
Zone 3,
Yeah, it's currently zone 3.
which we felt like.
That give them more optionality if they were in lighting
Allow
zone.
for the bistro lights to go for the food and beverage areas.
So like at the distillery, that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Mhm.
But what about these green lights?
Well, that's not allowed, so.
That the council said, okay.
I wasn't aware of that, so.
But they could still have the lights on the building in white.
Correct. But they
Mhm.
could do that if it was zone 3 too.
So wait, I just want to make sure. So this should say, should lighting zone 2 be expanded to airport road? Okay.
Yes.
If all it does is expand the bistro lighting for food and beverage areas, I'm okay with that.
number one, I could go either way on white versus colored in zone 3, particularly if colored lights are better for wildlife. I yield to staff. Number 2, yes, zone 2 should be expanded to Airport Road. Thank you.
Alan, can we hear from you?
Sure thing. I think definitely colored lights should be allowed in the residential area with the caveat that I think there needs to be a time limit on that in terms of both curfew and how long past the holiday it should be allowed. And then definitely expand zone 2 to Airport Road.
Question number 1, I'm okay with colored holiday lights, but I also believe there should be a curfew for those lights, and I believe they should end sooner than they're now allowed to end. And I think that Airport Road should be included in zone 2.
Guerrero.
Question 1, colored holiday lights should be allowed in residential areas. I'm in favor of more restrictions or on lighting, and I hesitate to take down restrictions on lighting, so I'm a no on colored holiday lights in zone 3. For question 2, I agree that the Airport Road area has become more commercialized and should be therefore expanded to zone 2.
I am in favor of the colored lights from like Thanksgiving or a little bit before to the middle of January, with them being turned off at 11 at night and midnight for businesses in zone 3, I guess that is. I am in favor of the lighting change for the Airport Road.
Thank you. Thanks for pointing that out, Ally. Answer the questions.
Question number 1 about colored lights. I'm not opposed to the colored lights. And number 2, I believe that the lighting zone 2 should be extended to Airport Road.
Okay, thanks, guys.
Before you start, I got a question for you. A couple meetings ago, I raised the issue about sediment control. You were gonna go to engineering and ask that question. Did you get a response?
Yeah, I did. And I can follow up with you offline on it.
I'm sorry?
We can follow up offline on it.
Okay.
But yeah, as I recall, it was essentially we have a hard time enforcing what we have right now. So that was the general comment I got back on that. They understood where you were coming from, and that yeah, in an ideal world, we do even more. But yeah, that's kind of the response I got. So, but I can forward you her comments.
Okay.
Yep.
You know, my perspective again is about, my definition of sustainability is a little bit, different than what the town has that focuses mainly on energy. And I see this as a sustainability issue because it impacts wildlife.
Yeah.
And the quality of our water. So.
Thank you.
Okay.
It was a busy meeting last week with the council. First off, they had a lot of questions about the approval you guys had the week before for 114 South Main and called it up. So decided we're gonna have a call up. It's scheduled for the 24th of October will be the call up hearing. And the main issues that they had that they identified were employee mitigation. It was a little hard to follow that in terms of how, at least for the council to kind of grasp how it all matched up, considering there's so much outdoor space right now that's being counted versus it's going to be a larger interior that's coming with a new building. So that's one thing that they identified. And the second one was the rooftop deck issue that they want to talk that through some more as well. So anyway, call up scheduled on that. I haven't had one in a while, so.
Hey, Mark, will that be de novo or
Yes, a
will
de
they
novo
be
hearing, yeah,
Okay,
de novo hearing on the October 24th, Alan.
okay.
Yep. Maybe in relation to that, Dick Carlton suggested at some point we should have a work session about redevelopment in general. And there's a lot of issues around that. And it's something we've talked about internally for a while with the staff. And so that's something that, and as the council was talking about it, they said, yeah, it probably makes sense to start it with planning commission with just a work session. So that's something we'll work on here over the next several months and come to you when we've got a few things kind of ironed out that we want some input on. So anyway, and it may be just a philosophical discussion too, to a certain extent. So anyway, more to come on that. Then there was a legislative review. 2 local landmarkings on the Howe residents and the Casey residents were approved on second reading, and Sarah brought the net zero density code amendments for measurement to the midpoint between the 2 walls, and that council's good with that. So one more reading on that, but I don't expect anything's going to change as far as that goes. The main issue that was discussed at the meeting was BGV, once again, their proposal. So we focused on parcel 3, which is the South Gold Rush lot, and that's where the duplexes are proposed. There's a little more density now than was proposed in the previous, back the master plan, and then you saw that development permit. It's a little more than that now, and there's some questions, a lot of discussion about the wetlands impacts, and so that's something that's going to continue to need to be addressed by the applicants to the satisfaction of the council. They're asking questions like, could you lose a unit or 2 to free up space here? So that's going to continue to get ironed out over time. The council generally was okay with the idea of the duplexes there, but Mike Dudek was presented as these duplexes are going to pay for the housing in the the housing next door. And so anyway, they're okay with it, but they are concerned about the wetlands. Then we talked about parcel 5, which is just the 2 large single family homes at the end of 4 o'clock run. There's really not many concerns with those other than just working with the adjacent property owners in the county on access, because they've had ski in and ski out access there, and then maintaining some type of buffer, tree buffer between their homes and those. So they'll be pretty much slope side there. And then fair amount of discussion on parcel 6, which is the new proposed subdivision above Timber Trail. The applicants showed 2 alternative accesses that would go either in front of or behind the ski maintenance building where all the snowcats and everything are, out there by 4 o'clock trail. And that was largely to appease concerns of the existing Timber Trail subdivision residents and property owners. Both of those have some problems, lots of more site disturbance. The one would cut way more into the hillside, longer road access in that. Staff is very much supportive of utilizing the existing road, which has a tract at the very end of it that says for future access. And so it's very clear, and Chris has found all the plat notes on that I don't think the neighbors or Timber Trail property owners will be happy about that, but it's, in our opinion, makes the most sense, and the council agreed with that. It's like, why would you go put in a whole new road just to satisfy these people? And the new road is probably gonna create situations where there's headlights right directly into their homes anyway, so. Few other things related to that, there's an open space dedication required. New subdivisions require, 10% of the land be dedicated to the town, or the town accept a fee in lieu in roughly the value of 10% of that unsubdivided land. And we don't have a lot of new subdivisions here. So that's one that's going to come to play, and Mike Dudek has indicated he's willing to pay that because we've already told him we don't want that land. It doesn't meet a good public purpose. You see that in a lot of places where there's, a dedication of land, but it's not useful for any good public purpose for a park or for open space.
So which land are
purposes.
they talking about?
This, so it'd be the whole 11 acres above Timber Trail,
10% of that 11 acres.
10% of that.
So 1.1.
Yeah, something like that. And so what staff has already said is we would prefer to have the actual fee in lieu instead, because we can use to acquire open space somewhere else. So anyway, that's
So that would be somewhat of an impact fee
yeah,
subdivision.
yeah.
How do they calculate that based on what one of the?
What the
single-family
market
lots would be?
value is going to be.
Yeah, so this one's, it's a bit complicated, so we actually have engaged an appraiser. And, but the land currently has no density, but it's in a kind of commercially zoned portion of the master plan. And so talking it through the appraiser, he said it's actually a reasonably complicated appraisal. And then also the fact that it's being negotiated to have density in future. So it's like has all these different kind of overlaps and layers that they have to look at. So he's we're still at the very preliminary phase. I think he's trying to understand it better. So I provided with him a fair bit of information, and then we'll start talking contract soon. But
So would that appraisal perhaps be twofold? If they got the opportunity to transfer the density, this is what the value would be. The value prior to that is this. Is that how they would do that?
I think they're looking at it in several different ways, and I still have to go, like I said, I've had the preliminary conversation with this appraiser, because the first appraiser we contacted said you actually have to have a commercial license. There's, I guess, varying degrees of being an appraiser. And this one's a more complicated appraisal. So he referred me to another gentleman that lives also here in Breckenridge. And so, yeah, I think he's just trying to get his head wrapped around all the kind of parameters of this parcel. But per our subdivision code, it says that you need to do a 10% dedication or a fee in lieu that's based on the fair market value of the unsubdivided land. Unsubdivided.
So prior to the movement of the density.
It doesn't say for the movement. So that's the catch is right now it has no density, but there's the potential. So I think they're trying to, it's also adjacent to a ski area. So there's a lot of parameters in play here.
So that's just another one of the issues that's come up. Not a lot of other things associated with that. Next week, we're going to come back and try to recap some of the issues that have been discussed with the council. And then the following week on October 6th, it's a Friday, it's going to be a special meeting with the council because they want to continue to move on this and to just discuss parcel 4, which is the admin building site right now where the old East Peakade Hotel had been proposed. There's a bunch of issues there that we're going to need a whole meeting just to go through. Ski Hill Road traffic, bunch of stuff. So anyway, anything more on that, Chris? It's worth, thank you. So that's pretty much the summary of the meeting. I did want to mention a few meetings ago, we had talked about a field trip possibly in early October. We've had some changes that have come up in terms of our staff schedules. So we may reach out to you, but for right now, we don't have anything scheduled. But there's one possibility. We'll let you know later this week if that is something that's possible to work out. But otherwise, don't worry about putting anything in your calendars yet. So
That October 6th is a Friday. What time would that meeting be?
8:30 in the morning. Yep. That's all I had.
Yeah. All right, I think we're done. It is 7:35 and I will adjourn the meeting.
Take care, everybody.
Alan?
What would surprise you that there was a design flaw in